Hello and welcome back for another episode of Wrenches, Gadgets, and Hacks. If you've been listening along, you know we're in Series 3, the series with no theme. We just got some pretty awesome unscripted mavericks that we have here. And today, we're going to have another maverick in our household, Adam Thomas. Adam, tell us a little bit about yourself, the maverick that you are.
I was just trying to figure out, am I a wrench, gadget, or a hack? To start, you got me twice. You got me with Maverick, and then you got me with a wrench, gadget, and hack. So yeah, I mean, just the short of things. I know I don't do too many of these publicly. I'm not going to go back super far, but I was, a small town kid, been in construction my whole life. I drove machinery, built houses, built commercial buildings, renovated historic buildings. Ended up going to architecture school in Atlanta, Georgia, and decided that wasn't quite enough. So I doubled mastered in business and computer science, which was way easier than architecture, turns out. And then graduated in the recession of 0809 and decided, I guess I'll just start a thing myself, and immediately started a first version of what Reed Thomas was actually before Phil joined and we partnered up. Started a first version called Shift Solutions, and it was just like a bunch of college kids. And I spent a ton of time working on projects in like India, Japan, Singapore, Hong Kong, Argentina inside of like a compound, which was kind of interesting. I wasn't allowed to leave it. And it kind of struck me all at once that like there's this whole giant world of problems I can solve and solutions that can be come up with. And now I've spent the last decade with Phil and our team of 10 here just trying to figure out which solutions we're going to solve each year, which problems we're going to solve each year, which solutions we're going to chat through. And yeah, hopefully we can kind of use that as a bouncing off point. It's not a sales pitch. Don't think anybody has to email me, but I am happy to chat for an hour if someone just wants some non-billable fun time. So
Very cool.
that's about it. That's it, man.
Well, that's certainly what we like to hear. And I think that's a good place to talk for our unscripted conversation. The idea of, I'm going to do air quotes here, of consulting, the idea of keeping with our theme, the hired hand. You have something that you can't do, don't know how to do, or sometimes don't want to do. So you go out and look for someone else that can come in and either guide you in the right direction, perhaps do it for you, and just get the work done. When you use the term consulting, or a consultant, I find a lot of people think back to Office Space, the two Bobs, coming in,
Yeah.
what exactly it is that you do here, have fun with your firings type of thing. And that's really not what we do nowadays. Like the idea of consulting is, as you say, Adam, and even right on your website, the idea of project support, problem
Mm.
solving, we're now thinking of teaching them to fish as opposed to giving them that fish.
Yeah. It's, grown up how I did. It's more of a baptized by fire kind of thing. We're in the fire constantly. It used to be you had like technical documentation, like a schedule for how you were going to complete things. You had to meet a timetable. And now it's just like, hey, it's 11 o'clock at night. Everything's on fire. Shit's broken. Can you jump in? And it's like, also, can you jump in and be calm about it? It's like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. I can hold an even head and be burned a little bit. That's totally fine. The trick is trying to coach everyone else not to panic as well. So you're not just doing technical liaison tasks, you're doing kind of psychiatry or psychology tasks as well, which is why a big part of what we do is focused on, leadership and management and discussion format driven things. Not that we can't hang in there with the best of them, but there's other mavericks that you guys are talking to that I would say are more technical than us. You still got a couple left that I would say are more technical, and you've had one that's more technical. So yeah, it's a baptized by fire approach. You got to keep calm under intense panic, and then just get home at night to your family and change it up a little bit. You got to be the dad that plays in the four, the mom that plays in the four and does bath time. You can't talk about Revit and Dynamo and 3JS and AI anymore. So
Yeah.
it's a weird thing to balance.
Yeah, I think that's like one thing that's interesting. So like some of the interactions I've had with you, like on Twitter, for instance, oftentimes it's like, hey, go take a walk to figure this
Yeah.
out. That's always something that I've always appreciated from you on like your Twitter feed, at least, is that kind of getting back to like the basics in a way. Just go for a
Yeah.
walk. It's huge. And I think given the last few years too, especially with everyone going to work from home who might not have before, people have a tendency of not leaving their office or their desk or their laptop. And I
It's
think
tough.
those kind of things are so powerful. And it seems like
Yeah,
you guys
we're
push a lot of that stuff.
yeah, I'm so I originally went to school to be a college athlete. I was going to play baseball. And so like the root of what I do is like I was on construction sites getting sunburned, and I played baseball and basketball my whole life. And I was much smaller back in the day. I was 65 pounds lighter and 4 inches shorter when I went to college to play ball. And there's something strange that happened when I spent 5 years of my life just sitting. It, like, my mentality was broken, the way I communicate with people was broken. So I started to do the thing I typically refer to as like walk and talks. Let's just walk and talk. Let's go.
Yeah.
Like I don't mind billing, like, you billing me if you're on my team for 10 minutes of us walking and talking, because at the end of the day, I need higher levels of endorphins. I need clearer mindsets, and it helps me too, so I can problem solve better. And I think
Mhm.
you're right. Like, just being at home has not only like disconnected us from one-on-one talking, but it's disconnected us from any semblance of like health and wellness. It's really tough to like go to the gym when you work from home. Some of us use it as an escape, like I have to get out of the house to go to the gym. But I think using things as an escape can end up really parasitic if you're not careful, because then
Yeah.
you're doing it for the wrong motivation. Instead of like, I want to go to the gym to prove to my daughter and wife that being healthy is a better form of life. I want to go walk around as a family because it allows us to talk about things that we're not going to see if we flip the TV on at home. And I've just tried to like extend that into every aspect of business. So if I go meet with a company, it's kind of normal for me to say, hey, we're going to walk to lunch. I'm paying for it. This is totally off the billing cycle, off the books, but we're going to go walk around for 30 minutes because I need
Yeah.
to understand the root of the problem. And the only way I can do that is to get your mind to like clear up, get out of the office, get out of the
For
office
sure.
mindset. So yeah, you're spot on. It's been
Very
tough for the
cool.
last couple of years. Yeah, we're trying. We're trying.
Yeah. Trying to get there for sure.
Yeah.
Do you get much resistance to that? Like you say, the last few years aside, some people, some companies, some organizations, that they don't work that way. They have the
Yeah.
old school mindset. If you're in the office, you're doing your work, doing your due diligence. You know,
Yeah.
maybe that's part of the problem.
Yeah. I mean, I think I do. Look, I'm guilty of it too, right? Like if we're on a big, tight push for a project that's on fire. I mean, our consulting it's kind of evenly divided between architecture, MEP, and then VDC coordination and clash detection. Like it's kind of evenly divided. And you know as well as I do, when you get to the construction coordination side, nothing's ever on time or ahead of schedule. So it's really easy to get lost in the, well, it has to be done yesterday mindset. And so you kind of look up after 2 or 3 days of doing that, go, we're not doing ourselves any favors trying to hit these deadlines that are moving targets. Let's go have a walk and talk. But you're right, it's sometimes a bit of a holdup to talk with management or accounts payable or whoever the CEO is. But the good thing is typically those people brought us in, not someone under them. So we're getting sign off at the top level, not the mid level. So we're never questioned when we say, hey, Carl, I think it would be really good when I come to chat with your team if the first thing we do in the morning before we start talking about issues is go on a 15-minute walk and I'll buy everybody coffee. I don't get resistance when I present it that way. And I typically go with, we're going to get twice as much done if we do this too. We're going to be more productive for your money. So how can
For
you
sure.
argue with that? If anything, they just go, yeah, I like money, and they continue on. It's an idiocracy statement, right? Like, I like
Yeah.
money, and they just keep going. So
Yep.
we don't get a lot. We've had one client that we've had to fire years ago, and it's because they said we don't dive deep enough technically. And my response was, your team's not ready for technical deep dives. They don't even understand the first layer of the problem they're trying to solve yet. This is the only way we're
Yeah.
going to get to it. And we tried and tried and tried, and they just fundamentally could not come to see eye to eye with how we were trying to approach the problems. And so we had to part ways. We still
Yeah.
actually keep up with each other, but that was like our only quote unquote firing of a client we've ever had. It's like, this isn't going to work. And it was killing our team when we were doing it too. So it's just everything would shift and kind of move rapidly each day. Like there was no structure. So
Huh.
yeah, it's rare. I think it's actually getting better, Carl. like to your point, it's getting better now when I kind of do something like that and say, hey, we're going to change it up. Like nobody's eating at their desk today. Round it up. We're going to lunch. I don't get anybody that says, no, I really have a deadline to hit. It's like it was more of a directive. Like I wasn't asking permission. I'll take the fallback.
Yeah.
You guys get a free out right now. I'll get yelled at if there's a problem. I promise you. And they're like, okay, if Adam wants to get yelled at, it's totally fine.
Yeah.
We'll watch. So it's getting better and better though. And I
Yeah.
hope it continues to get better because I mean, we're in our office. All of our team is in our office. And when I used to work from home, it's hard to you can't do that if everybody's not coming into the office. I can't go to everyone's house. I'm still trying to figure that out. Like, how do you do something if on a 10-person team, if I can't go visit all of them?
Yeah.
And get them to be comfortable. It also just helps people, be more human toward each other. You're not a problem
Absolutely.
or a solution. You're a human. So, but yeah, I think it's going to keep getting better. We're going to have some
Cool.
I'm very hopeful that our industry in general starts having like some pretty amazing dynamic workplaces in the next decade. I'm not talking Google, Facebook level dynamic where it's a false front, but a little bit more dynamic than sitting in a really expensive desk chair in front of an okay computer for 8 hours a day with no benefit besides that.
Yeah.
Everybody's just living for turning off the monitor and walking home or going home. And we can't have that. It'll destroy the industry. It'll burn us out. So
Yeah. And I think that's really interesting too. So like getting to the root of some of the issues here, like you mentioned the client that was just being really technical right up front, but
yeah,
you kind of stepped them back. I think that's really unique. And we all like using Revit. We all like using all these tools, but
yeah,
like if there's fundamental problems in place where the team just doesn't communicate well or work together well, or there's egos
yeah,
at play, that stuff needs fixed pretty quickly. And we've encountered that too, to where we have clients who are like, let me teach you how to Revit. And I'm like, can we talk about the fact that like none of this is working first, like on a
yeah, right,
fundamental level? Like that's
right.
cool that you know how to make a really nice door family, but I don't
Yep.
care, like
Yeah.
so I think
Yeah.
that's really cool.
We were just talking about this. Actually, Don Bachmiller and I were just talking about this with a client earlier this week. I said, we're not the team that's going to make you the most complicated thing. Can we? Yeah, we can. We absolutely can. But you have so many base level problems we have to get over right now that
Hmm.
solving something with a complicated answer is not a solution at all. It's just more problems 3 and 4 weeks later. And
Hmm.
I'm starting to see our industry realize that that's a problem. We had really smart people make really technical solutions and then leave the company. Now we're having to unwind their ball of yarn. And to do that, we're putting duct tape where we should be TIG welding things. We're putting duct tape where we should have wrecked it and started over. And then you get 4 or 5 more years along and you're like, maybe I should call Adam. I know I said no 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Well, maybe we should call him now. And they're all coming back around.
Yeah.
They're like, we jumped through 4 BIM managers at this point. And I said, yeah, you guys are burning them out.
Yeah.
You're absolutely burning them out. I won't let you burn us out. I'm
And I
going to
think
pick up the
that's
phone and
really
call you.
remarkable for you to protect your team in that way. I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, I'll go to
Um,
war.
I
Like,
like that a lot.
absolutely go to war.
I wish we saw more of that, like on like a firm level, like at
Yeah,
architecture firms protecting their
yeah,
teams in that way. But no, like you just said, they burn people out. Just
yeah,
it's always like so crazy to me because we're consultants too. But
yeah,
like you'll be working with user A 1 month, and then you're on user F by the next year because BIM
yeah.
managers keep getting turned over, and it's so crazy seeing that in our industry.
Yeah,
Um,
it's now I won't say it's always the company's problem. I think we as humans, as production people and problem solvers, we have problems too. So
mhm.
I think that a lot of times we want all the money and all the fame with none of the actual aggressive goal setting or schedule maintaining. Like we want our cake and we want to eat it too, right?
Yeah.
So the first thing I have to figure out is like you kind of play the whole, who's on first base. It's like I got to figure out the players first and the dynamics. We're not even going to talk about technicals yet. The technical problem is that you don't function as a team. That's the technical problem. It's not Revit, it's not Navisworks. And we've all been on those calls where somebody go, yeah, Revit's dumb. It just doesn't do this thing. And in the back of our head, we're like, no, it absolutely does that thing. You don't know how to do that thing. But you can't say that Instead,
No.
it's like, well, why do you think that? What made you not try to Google or YouTube a
Yeah.
solution first, just to see if there's a wacky idea out there? So you kind of have to peel it back. You got to go to base zero. And the more I'm dealing with a growing toddler, the more I'm realizing that you got to go back to base zero a lot as an adult. There's none of this like I'm just going to keep building on a wacky foundation and keep progressing. You sometimes have to restart yourself. And I feel like a lot of us did that in that 2020 time period. 2020,
Hmm.
2021, we really, you know, turned insular and started to correct some bad habits we had. So it's just an interesting psychological problem to solve because
Absolutely.
it's not always the management. I would say it's a toss up nowadays. So
Do you
I can't pinpoint or blame one specific person. I'm trying to go through my head and see if there's like a job title we typically run into the worst, but there's not.
Yeah.
It's a it's a pretty good toss up.
do you find that to be generational? I mean, we're at the stage now
Ooh,
when we early on started talking about that. A lot of things were this is the way we always did it, and there's a lot of that
yeah,
in the industry. But as we know, there's a shortage of skilled people
yeah,
in the AECO in general, and a lot of the people that have been around for a long time are retiring more and more. So we are
yeah.
getting younger generations, younger people, different ways of thinking coming in and moving up the ranks into
Yeah.
those higher level positions. So things are definitely changing. But is it better change, worse change, different change likely?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I came through like the whole journeyman mentality. Like I was trained on a job site by building things and then a foreman ripping it apart. That foreman was my father, by the way. So I got it double hard, right? It's like not only will my son not build it this way, but my employees won't build it this way. So you have to build it twice as good as anyone else. If I tell you to do electrical work and be certified by the end of the month, you will be certified by the end of the month. It's not a question. And I don't see, now listen, it's changing a little bit, but the one big hole I see is like there's a bit of a divide in office. It's those who have had for 30 years and don't want to, impart or pass down knowledge to those that are new. And that divide is starting to go away, I think primarily because people are retiring. And then companies are like, what do we do? We have all these people that don't know how to lead and manage, but they're kind of technical, but they don't know how to put a building together. And all the people that knew how to put buildings together that were mentors and leadership focused are leaving. So what do we do? We've been filling that gap for some companies where we go in and say, well, we know how to put buildings together from every aspect. We're not as good as Bob was,
Yeah.
but we're a really good 80% for what you need to do. And I think that there also has to be a little bit of a mindset shift on both sides to accomplish that. It's literally not one person's fault or one generation's fault anymore. I could have pointed more fingers 10 years ago when I was younger and dumber. But that's because I was a bit of a spitfire. Like I was so tired of having to communicate up to three different people on what I needed to do to accomplish a task. So I just said, okay, well, I'll just start my own thing. Then I communicate directly with the person who signs the checks. So I got out of the industry as quick as I was indoctrinated into it. So get out of it, start your own thing, and learn as fast as you can. But on the lower end, like I think being that I'm shifting out of that 20-year-old generation, patience. Like coming out of college, be patient. Like focus on patience. Like actually focus on it and think about it. Don't just rattle off things all day long as if you know them. Well, I Googled it. I used Chat GPT. We're doing this wrong. It's like just slow down and ingest it and pause and take notes and then come back with a solution 24 hours later. You don't have to come up with things on the spot. Just be patient and definitely don't criticize and belittle when you're not at the top of the food chain yet. And I feel like if we do that, it'll take the other generational side and say, I actually want to mentor those people now. And I think it'll heal little by little if we do it. But if we're not quick enough in trying to do that, we're going to lose all of our mentors. They're
Yeah.
going to be gone. They're going to be retired. So if we slow play it a bit too much, I think we'll look up and go, man, we had an awesome opportunity and we kind of blew it for a decade or 5 years. But it is getting better. And the fact that we're having conversations as a team that's 50% technical, 50% psychological is really interesting to me. Now, maybe it's because that's the stuff we do and we're kind of known for it, but I find it interesting. The emails I
Yeah.
get or the text messages I'll get. It's just like, hey, what do you think about this problem? It has nothing to do with Revit.
Yeah.
It has something to do with like where someone graduated and the salary they're wanting based on what they're trying to accomplish and how to meld that into a 12-person team that has no ability to mentor that person. It's like, how do you work through this? And this is coming from a team that like couldn't hire young people for the longest time. We just couldn't. We had to hire people that knew what they were doing. I mean, you guys are kind of in the same boat. You gotta know what you're doing as a
Yeah.
consultant. You can't hire folks out of college. It's hard. But then the last year and a half, I've hired as many people as I can out of college and just trying to throw it at the wall and see what see what sticks a little bit, see how we can help. And there is a gap. There's a gap, especially the COVID college. That was rough for folks. They like basically didn't learn anything for 2 years. It's really tough.
Yeah.
So, especially architecture, it's so studio focused. You can't really do studio in your house by yourself.
Yeah.
That's tough. So, it is getting better, but it's an awesome problem to talk about. I love talking about with anybody that wants to too. Like we can spitball for 30 minutes, come up with ideas.
Very interesting.
So you brought a good point there about the idea of getting through, and we have those people in the firms, the companies that have been there for a long time have their own way. We've got the new people
Sure.
coming up. And one of the things that I always hear people talking about, particularly in the construction industry, is we have all of this knowledge and we don't have any way to get it out of, Bob's been doing this for 30 years. That's his safety pin, that he knows that he doesn't want to share it with anyone. And so we're
Yeah.
always talking about how do we get that knowledge from Bob? But what
Yeah.
I'm not hearing, and what I think is going to be as big of a problem, is we're also not putting into a place now a way to capture current knowledge. Because in
Yeah.
20 years, we're going to be in the exact same boat, different pieces of knowledge, but we didn't, we need to capture Bob's knowledge. And because of that, we should start capturing Stan's knowledge now and have it grow
Yeah.
with the company. But we're not having any of that either. Do you guys
Yeah.
kind of help? When you're helping with the Revit and the Navisworks problems, are you also helping with not only the culture, but how to make sure we cultivate that knowledge sharing as we move through?
Yeah. So cultivation is like two parts for me, right? One part is data entry, one part is accountability. So accountability is not necessarily data entry. Like I don't need an email to be accountable. Accountability is like I'm Bob and I told Carl I would do that thing. I need to do that thing. And if I don't do that thing, Carl needs to call me out on it. And I can't be offended by that. I can't let my emotions rise to a boiling point immediately. Oh, well, Carl, I mean, you can't do that. You have to kind of look at it like an even head. The data entry part, I think, is going to be harder than the accountability part. If you would have asked me that 5 years ago, I would have said, nah, data entry is easy. Data entry is so emotionally driven and opinionated that it's really hard to have a unified front for data entry. We have a lot of big brained people that think that they're doing data entry correct across a myriad of disciplines that are not in our industry, and none of them agree with each other. Scientists barely agree with each other on formulations of like medicine and how to use controls for experimentation. Why would we be able to figure it out? Quite frankly, we're a more complicated industry because we have more moving parts, literally and figuratively. So
Yeah.
we can handle the accountability part. We can do that. I can coach people and our team can coach people on getting through that part. And it's going to be a lot of really hard conversations for a month. And then you're all best friends. After that, you feel like family all of a sudden. And family in a good way, not a bad way, not
Yeah.
the parasitic family, the family you actually want to see for the holidays.
Right.
So I feel like a lot of our clients are quite frankly like that. And a lot of them come up with a lot of really good ideas where it's like, hey, I like how you guys did A, B, and C in Navisworks. Can you come do a presentation on how you did that so that we know how to do it? And that presentation is not 100% picks and clicks. It's a 50-50 presentation on like an activity where we write and draw things and move around and where we role play a little bit of it. Like if I've done this thing and it's supposed to go to John, what happens to Carl? Like let's go through it and write it down because you need to know when you send an email or make a phone call or update a clash point, it has an order that it
Yeah.
has to flow through. You can't just throw things out into the ecosphere and hope for the best. You can't send a
Mhm.
Hail Mary and then go home for the day. And then you have to be there to help solve the problem if you caused it. Take accountability again and solve the problem. So I've gotten to do some really interesting stuff with that, where it's like, think outside the box, Adam. We're not going to open Navisworks at all. Let's see what you can come up with. And I'll go do an 8 hour, 1 day in-depth session where everybody's like sweaty at the end of the day because we've been trapped inside of a room with no air conditioner. And we all leave exhausted and more hopeful than we came in.
Yeah.
I've seen it be really positive. It's not because of anything I'm doing. It's just because those people were primed to be responsive to what I'm coming to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of it, that somebody did their job before I got there. You know, the BIM manager or the CEO or a project manager laid the groundwork. Hey, we're going to do some weird stuff. This guy might throw something off the wall that makes no sense. He's not going to open Navisworks today.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? But we're supposed to be talking about how we could coordinate better. He's not going to open Navisworks today. We'll do that tomorrow.
I think that's really interesting. Like, that's one thing, like when Carl was doing a roundtable for AEC acoustics on AI, there's no computers in the room. And I was like, Carl, how's that going to go for you? And it's like, it sounds like it went great based on our discussions, but it's like a really interesting way to approach these things. Is we've all been to the conferences where we're sitting there and we're getting excited watching someone click through. But some of those deep conversations where like you leave feeling a certain way are so powerful.
Yeah.
You're just like,
we actually just opened up call for submissions or I always say call for proposals because that's the word I use, but it's just a call for sessions. Like we just opened it today, and the kind of directive I went with was, we all got on the phone, chatted through it, and said, let's not put any boundaries in place. Let's have a theme. So it's storytelling through technology. That's our theme. Everybody here knows that means you can talk about anything. It's unbounded now. Well, what's the format? Well, we know that the format last time we did it, we could have done small breakout sessions. We could have went for a walk in the woods and talked about it. We could have all been on paddle boards. It doesn't matter what we do. I want you to propose something. It's going to make people have to think outside the box a little bit, but it's going to mean that I think that, last year we had great sessions. Earlier this year, we had great sessions. We had great discussions. Like we're still thinking about those discussions and we're still reflecting on them and how we can implement them. Carl come up with the biggest list on usable AI experiments and things to play with of anybody in our industry, even people that talk about it nonstop.
Yeah.
And people still bring it up. So all I want to do is that, but engage something else in your mind. Like if I want to say, you know what, I love CrossFit. I'm going to do a CrossFit session and propose storytelling through AI and Revit. That's my proposal. We will look at it with genuine open arms because we think there are too many things that try to fit a mold. Yeah. And so we're really excited to see what people come up with. We've already gotten a couple of interesting discussions going about, would you guys care if I did X, Y, and Z? Like, is a walk in the woods really a thing I could do? And it's like, well, propose a way to make it useful to people.
Yeah.
We're not going to turn it down. If it's genuinely useful, you're telling a story while telling a story. You're telling people how to tell a story while telling a story about the topic. So it can get really interesting. But yeah, I think it's just going to get better. I think our biggest worry is that it gets to a point that it can't stay intimate anymore. And once it gets to an unruly beast, you now have to make promises that you have to keep to large companies that are funding things instead of just making promises to the attendees that are there. And we don't take money. It's just us doing it. So the promises are to everyone there, the attendees and the speakers. So it's going to get interesting. And I don't know how we're going to solve that problem, but it's going to be a lot of walking and talking, I'm sure.
There you go.
As a side note to all of that, some of that exploratory session happened when you're all standing around an industrial kitchen learning how to bake the best bagels you've ever had, and then you get to eat said bagels. So storytelling, and there was definitely storytelling that came with that session. I won't spoil it. It is a different way it engages your brain, a different way you're thinking of things a little bit off center, and that helps. It's just like nowadays taking notes is great, or having AI record notes is great, but you don't remember it. but the act of
Yep.
actually writing something down kind of, for whatever reason, brings it to the forefront of your
Mhm.
lobes there. The same
Yep.
sort of experience where there's that, the smell, the taste, the whole experience that comes
Yep.
with it. So
Yeah. If you can knock out multiple senses at the same time, that's like an old psychological trick. Like if you're studying for a test in college or high school, the worst thing you could do is go to the library and put headphones on and just look at paper or look at your screen. That's the worst thing you could do. Instead, go to the gym, pick up a basketball, and everybody that's taking that test tomorrow, it's a chemistry class. And you're going to talk about hydrogen molecules and how they bond. Have someone reading stuff off while you're shooting threes. And you're going to start associating the way hydrogen molecules bond with the smell of a basketball and the squeaks on a basketball court and the net making a noise when the ball goes in it. And it's going to be like, wow, I remember all of this. This is amazing. It's a trick that I wish somebody would have told me in college. And now I've realized that I can remember people's names from 10 years ago because I was walking around with them or I went and did an activity with them. And I can remember like what their wife's name was or what their husband's name was or which company they left and why they were frustrated because now it's associated with like a smell and an exercise or a smell and an activity.
Yeah.
And it kind of locks it in. It's really strange. I don't think everybody's brain works that way. I think there are people that can just ingest data. We've got a developer that works with us that he doesn't need to walk and talk. You put numbers in front of him, he ingests them. He's totally fine.
Yeah.
He needs to walk and talk because he needs an emotional break.
Yeah.
He needs that mental and emotional break, not because he needs to remember things. So, yeah, I'm hoping we can keep expanding this. Like
Very cool.
I think you're right, Carl. Like that might have been the point where me and Phil were like, oh, there's something to having an activity. We knew we didn't want computers. We didn't need them really. We might have recorded stuff on our phone. Like I have all the recordings and I've processed them all and gotten transcripts for them. But yeah, Bob's session was kind of a different kind of interesting that maybe sparked us thinking about it a little differently. So I'm hoping we can. I know John tried to get you to come last this year too, but you were
Yeah.
fresh into dad mode. So I'm hoping I can bug you again next year and
I'll have to
hopefully we can
look
get
at it.
Carl back down. Yeah, it's going to be fun.
absolutely, you should come, John. But as we're always do, we always blow past that 30 minutes. So before we go too much farther, I have two questions for you, Adam, to to close off. So I'll leave the question, your hack, for the end. But because you were just mentioning the idea of having this conference and these experiences and not having computers, it reminds me of something you mentioned a little bit earlier, which is people over technology.
Yeah.
And we're a technology podcast. We're all technology geeks. But that statement tweaked my interest, and I think I know where you're going to go with it. But how can you address that idea of being a technological geek and being in a very tech savvy industry and still say people over technology?
So the simplest way I think about this, and it's something that I change year over year. It's a few years ago it started to bubble up, and you hear a lot of like big heads, like management, leadership level people say it's all about your people, it's all about your culture. I don't actually mean that. I don't mean it from the emotional standpoint. I mean that technology is always going to get better, and we're always going to be able to leverage it. But people don't increase at the same rate as a piece of technology. That doesn't mean that people are going to go away. What it means is that people are going to become more important than ever. And if we're not controlling the discussion around how our people are being trained and how our people are motivated and what people want out of life, doesn't matter how much technology we have. Until we are free for all, I can speak to my MacBook Pro and my MacBook Pro pulls a Tesla into my yard with groceries and makes me dinner. We will need people. Until robots take over entire construction sites well after I'm dead, and we have to have government regulation in place to have half people, half robots on job sites just for fairness, we will need people. And people, I think, are the scarcest resource because if people get emotionally damaged or discharged, they don't want to come back to the industry. We all know that friend or coworker that got in a big fight or felt like they were done wrong, and they've now been serving food for the last 5 years. They refuse to come back to the industry, or they went into consulting, but it's like graphic design consulting. It's something they can control. I know a lot of people that went into just app development, but they don't know how to sell or market themselves. So they're just as depressed as ever. And it was spurred by not leveraging your people. I'm not saying burn them out, but we need to leverage each other and the emotional bias and emotional needs that we have. And we need to show just a tremendous amount more compassion than we currently do. None of us are going to agree on anything if we don't show compassion. Carl could tell me the craziest thing right now that I just disagree with politically, apolitically, whatever it is. And I would still call Carl because I know that he's not trying to attack me, but it's because me and Carl have a great relationship. If we would have never formed that relationship, he couldn't be open about things. And we think that people are transactional. Like I can just say whatever I want to a person and they have to come back to work tomorrow. Well, no, they don't. They don't have to come back to work tomorrow. And if they don't come back to work tomorrow, you are screwed most of the time. So we have to be a bit more compassionate, a bit more friendly, and invest a little bit more in people. And we have to help people understand that they have to be motivated to go out and get it too. You can't just sit around and wait for your director to come bring you something on a silver plate. Like be motivated. And that's probably going to set up my hack, but sorry.
Well, I think that's you did your own intro. So the last question we always ask on this podcast is to give us one hack relevant to the topic du jour, the topic we've had today. So I think you just set yourself up, but I'll let you knock it down.
Yeah. So I actually have been thinking about this for the last week. And the thing that kept coming up over and over again, I like simple themes because I was raised in a simple place. I started with just challenge yourself, like set a goal and achieve it. And that goal needs to have nothing to do with technology. Like challenge yourself to be atypical in technology. So I said it can be something simple, right? Challenge yourself to do 5 push-ups a day. Start a spreadsheet, check it off. Put a sticky note on your desk and check it off. Challenge yourself to walk 1 minute every day for the next month and then do it. And then build on that until challenges and questions and things that are new don't make you feel icky because us technical people are fine with it, right? Like just throw me a new technical thing or a piece of software, I'll figure it out. What we're not great at is handling like physical and emotional things. And if you handle those physical and emotional things, I think you become a little bit more weighted for the positive, and then you become more impressively technical. So it's kind of like a superpower in your back pocket, I think. So I know that hack is probably a bit out there, but my hack is literally to just challenge yourself and then hold yourself accountable. And you'll start to have these really insular thoughts where it's like, I couldn't even do my 5 push-ups a day, but I'm telling Carl he's a lazy slob. That thought will go away because you couldn't hold yourself to 5 push-ups a day. So we do it here in the office too. Like we go for walks. We went through like 2 months of doing push-ups. We went through a month of trying to do squats every day. We try to walk, like we try to change it up. I'm trying my best right now with my 4-year-old to learn something in a new language every single day. So like super simple, right? She's 4, but we counted to 3 and 4 languages. And then the next day we review that. It only takes a few seconds and she thinks it's hilarious. And then it's like, well, let's do hello in French, German, Spanish, and English. Let's do that the next day. And so it's this bite-sized thing. And I think what it does is just builds confidence for people, like really slowly. So if something does hit you in the chest in work, you can recover from it really quick. And both Phil and I actually are huge advocates of this. I think our whole social media presence has kind of changed over the last few years. It's like we really need to focus on becoming better versions of ourselves. And you don't become a better version of yourself by doing it in isolation either. So do it with others too. And then challenge them and then hold them accountable so they'll hold you accountable. So that's my hack. I know that's probably not what you guys were thinking, but
I think it's
that is my hack.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Yeah, I think it's a good hack. I will caution you though that if you start doing office burpees, you may get a mutiny on your hand. There is a line in the sand, and that's where I would draw it.
I would be first in line for that mutiny, I think. But we did a CrossFit competition, me and an older guy. The first time we did it, CrossFit competition, right after kind of 2020, it was a pairs competition. The name of the team was Anything But Running. And we got like 4th in North Carolina. And then the next time we did it, it was Anything But Burpees was our name. So it's like those two things will create a mutiny with me too. I used to be able to run. I used to be able to do burpees. Now it's just like gravity is holding me down differently. But I do go through 1 month a year where I have 1 month of burpees, and I add 5 every single day that I go to the gym. So I typically finish at like 100 burpees. It takes me like 20 minutes to do it. It's miserable. They look like they would be so fast, and it's so terrible. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a way to sink the ship and cause people to trade sides really fast.
There you go.
Yeah, that's so wrong. And because we went down this road, I heard somewhere, it's probably on social media, but similar to that, challenge yourself. It was more of a New Year's challenge, but it was, for January, they only eat food that's in their house. So they don't go to the
Oh,
grocery
nice.
store. They don't, they
Yep.
just, whatever's in the cupboard that you've gathered over the course of the year. So you're eating,
Yep.
craft dinner and whatever it might be. And I thought of that, and I looked in my cupboard and I thought that would be an interesting challenge, but wow, that would be an interesting challenge because I know what's in my cupboard.
That's
Beans
right.
and
That's right.
rice, man.
Yeah.
That's right. Our kiddo loves beans and rice. We'd make it.
Yep.
We have dozens of pounds of rice. We're ready to go in that case.
There we go.
I saw
Same
one.
here.
I saw one similar, Carl, where it was like challenge yourself to cook 1 extra time a week and cook as a family when you do it. And it's like that actually could work. Me and my wife used to do it before we had kids, and now it's mainly her cooking, and then I come in and eat the food. We've gotten into that kind of relationship, and it's like, I don't feel good about this. Like we should challenge ourselves to just do that once a week. It could be a small goal, but you get to check it off the list, and then you get that endorphin rush of checking it off the list, and then you go into the next week better. So I think it's awesome.
I like it. And on that note, I say au revoir. To get another language in there for you. Thank you for joining another episode of Wrenches, Gadgets, and Hacks, where we explore the tools, technologies, and time-saving hacks, as well as challenges that are shaping your future. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe somewhere down here, and stay tuned for more insights into the exciting world of AECO and technology. Until next time, keep building, innovating, and exploring the possibilities. Hey!